How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Inner Compass podcast. Here, along with my good friend Scott Kidd, and today is pretty special to me because somebody told me once upon a time that relationships are kind of like bank accounts, and you either end up in the credit section or the debit section. Are you in the black or are you in the green? Well, definitely in your bank account and in your relationships, you definitely want to be in the green to where when you need something, when you need a friend, when you need that person, you hope that you can borrow a little bit from them. So we're going to jump right in. But Scott, first, man, kick it off with your introduction, who you are, and let's go.
How you doing, Scott Kidd, yacht captain, real estate investor, and now doing two podcasts, the Inner Compass podcast, this one, and the Yacht Captain Investor podcast. Happy to be here with my good friend Eddie Austin. We get into a lot of in-depth things that I wish I would have heard people talking about 20 years ago, and I wish I would have listened. But today is all about credits and debits, just like we do in business. We have to do that in our relationships. And one of the key things is, like you were just saying, everything's either a credit or a debit, and especially when we get hit with a business situation, a lot of times we can take it personal and we need that other person that's going to credit our account and say, hey, give us either the tough love that we need or say, hey, it'll be all right. Pick yourself up, get going here. What do you need to do? Ask you the right questions, put you in the right direction, and give you that guidance that you need sometimes, because everybody needs help sometime. We all do. So
Yeah.
we should all be there to help each other. And in light of a lot of things going on, that's irrelevant. We always need to find that balance.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, just being around friends and family and surrounding myself around the right people, of course. But there was times that I was keeping a lot in silence, and by being around other people, even if it's a Zoom, even if it's a phone call, just the general conversation was uplifting. And the friend or the family member pops the question, man, how's everything going in that venture?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been wrestling with a lot of things and said that venture. And at that moment, they're just like what you just said. Well, you'll make it the other side, or it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And or they had a perspective that I hadn't looked at yet. They looked at something from a different lens that gave me the ability to go, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel it's so important. Number one, that if you have a group of people or a family member that you're very close to, because I'm going to definitely go to family members for a minute. Like for me, I aspire to live to 120. But let's say if I live to 80, I only have 38 summers left.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if I only see my loved ones once a year, I only see them 38 more times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not a lot.
No.
And, like my dad, he's turning 87 here pretty soon. How many summers does he have left? So the other day I was looking around and I had seen my dad sitting on the porch. So I, just pull up there and start talking to him because I thought I had tons of other things to do. But
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my calendar and I'm like, how important is what I'm doing right now compared to getting in the credit section right there?
Mm-hmm.
Not just waving and going about my way, but getting back into the credit section of this relationship and just stopping and spending, 20 minutes with him and moving a meeting. That was so easy. And at the end of it, he says, son, I can't tell you how happy it makes me that you still find time to stop and talk to me and take time out. I know you're busy, but
Mm-hmm.
this means so much to me to still get to talk to you, and the same with my mom. And, just like my friends, there's times that I call a friend out of the blue and I say, hey, man, how's it going? They're like, man, I've been thinking about you so much, but they hadn't made the call. So sometimes you have to take that initiative. And I would ask you the question, are you in the credit section or the debit section? Are you in the green or are you in the black? With some friendships that have really helped you through life. Ask yourself that question. If you are in the black with a couple different friends, rearrange your calendar. Take some
Mm-hmm.
time out of your busy schedule and call them up and say, "Hey man, it's been a while. How you been?"
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm telling you right now, when the times get tough, when you face hard decisions, you'll wish that you had people in the green that you could call up and go, "Hey man, how you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
"Man, I'm doing great. How are you?" "Oh, I'm doing all right." But they know you well enough when you say, "I'm doing all right." That means there's probably something you need to get off your chest or vent or
Mm-hmm.
just talk about life. Scott, where have you found that to be true in your life with certain things that you've been through?
Well, one that always, like for me, is the same thing with you with family. And I find that interesting that your dad's turning 87. My dad's turning 87 this month, too.
That's very cool. So both are.
1930, 1938 was a big year.
It was a big year.
It was a
That's so
big year.
awesome, man. I
Yeah.
think about, let's just take a stop a point for a minute here, just to stop and think about that. Man, can you imagine what this world looked like at 1938? I own a 35 Chevy
Yeah.
sedan, so I know what the cars
Nice.
look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But can you just imagine, some of the dirt streets and some of the
Yeah.
stories that my dad have
Still
told me?
horses. Yeah. Still
Yeah,
horses and
yeah,
carriages and what was modern was they called the motor car,
yeah,
and and then, they even had electric milk wagons and stuff like that around that time and all kinds of other things. And then, of course, that was World War II as well.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, we just have to really, our parents were a product of that depression they came out of, and that scarcity mindset and everything that was a really powerful time, especially a powerful time for the world because it was, it took a strong sense of character to get us out of there. And that goes to that, credits and debits that we're talking about, where a lot of people sacrificed everything to credit the next generations and generations to come. So that's what I'm thinking about right now is because where, what are our kids or stuff going to say? Like, wow, wonder what it was like in 69 or 1978, or what have you. Can you imagine that? No cable TV, no,
yeah, yeah.
no internet, you know, no electric vehicles or no spaceships or whatever, no
On your
life
right
on
or left
Mars.
hand, on
Yeah,
your right or left hand right now, I remember like it was yesterday that my parents had a bag phone. It
yeah,
was between the two seats. It was in the
yeah,
floorboard, and that was the phone. It was made by Motorola. And then I
yeah,
remember,
yeah,
you'll remember this too, the great big gray Motorola
yeah,
brick that had the hard
yeah, the
antenna.
brick.
The thing was like this long, and you hold it.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was a
yeah,
cell phone, and this is a supercomputer. It's in our
yeah.
hand.
That has
That's
more amazing. That has more power than it took to get to the moon and computers and stuff like that. And you think about like things like that, or because when we had my parents had a trash business, trucking business in Texas when I was a kid, and we had a phone, similar thing in the car because they also had the mobile radios, and then it was also had a handset for a phone as well because things were always happening. The truck break down or whatever, we always had to make the call and everything, and that was in the 80s, and that was a giant apparatus that was in the
it
car. And
was.
I think if you turned it on too long, it would kill the battery on the car.
That's true. And do you remember the beepers,
Yes, that was a
the
big
little beeper that went
innovation.
on your side?
Yeah, the little beeper, and then that was a big tech thing, and then we moved into the internet, and then we went to Wi-Fi, and then now
Yeah.
we're
So
you
funny,
know
funny segue. My dad with a beeper. So, do you remember? This is probably a Florida thing, but we were living in Florida at the time. I was born and raised in West Palm Beach and in Okeechobee as well. But Dad was over by the coast, and they had they looked like the big Care Bears or whatever. They were the different animal shapes. Those are recycle bins.
Yeah, yeah,
So scarcity mindset, probably this is where this come from. Dad was always kind of that recycler, had
yeah.
money, but he was always one to pick up a penny and also just, save in any way he could. So anyway, he needed some jugs for one of the boats or something. He needed some jugs to carry some water on the boat. So whatever reason, Dad decides to dive into one of these things, and he's in there rummaging around, and all of a sudden his beeper starts going off. Well, he thought that was the trash truck that was coming to pick this thing up because his beeper's going off, and he's thinking that he's about to get picked up and thrown in the back of a truck. So he starts just flailing around, and he ends up knocking this thing over and climbing out of it. When he climbs out, there's a homeless guy there with his eyes like big as quarters going, he doesn't know what in the heck's going on. And all we know is Dad reaches over, and it was this beeper going off the whole time. So just a funny story. That was one of those technology things that, man, freaked you out. You thought that was a backup beeper or
Yeah,
a
yeah, because
beeper for a trash truck.
yeah, we had those garbage trucks, and they would because they were all rear load. So when they were all like luxury apartments, and that was the old man and my mom's their niche was because the luxury apartments they always wanted to rear load dumpsters so they could put them all the way in the back, so that the clients and the residents wouldn't really have to see it, and it would go down the chute and stuff like that, and you back all the way down, because there were also entrances and exits for service engines for the back of the buildings. So you always had to back up with the alarm so people knew they were coming down the alleyway. So that's funny that man, boy, I bet he got out of there in a hurry.
He did, man. He was white as a ghost, and so was the homeless man that was standing there wondering what in the world.
I
He
bet.
probably thought that thing was possessed, moving around on its own.
Yeah, and for a homeless guy to get freaked out, that's probably that's got to be a lot. That's got to be a lot. You're gonna see a lot living on the streets and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you do.
Imagine some random guy with a
So,
beeper
you know,
rummaging around in there, falling out of
all
the big
started over a guy
container
with a
there.
beeper. So for you, your dad's 87, and think about, just times throughout life that was you in the credit or the debit section on certain relationships, and how did you reconcile like that? How did you? It's very easy to reconcile friendships, right? And
Hmm.
go back and repair some relationships or rekindle a relationship even.
Hmm.
So, was there some times throughout life that you can relate to what I was talking about?
Yeah, yes, there definitely is. There's a lot of times, and I think that all comes down to like the tribe of people that you build around you and stuff. That a lot of times you can be down or tired, and there's especially you know a time where I'd lost my business, got laid off, and everything like that, and I wasn't really too sure, and I'd kind of that whole decade I'd been kind of jumping from one thing to the next and to the next, and then those things kind of went sideways and everything else, and then my business partner and roommate, he just kind of said, well, and he's from the Netherlands, he's Dutch, so and you know one of my best friends in life. He's just a brother from another mother, and it's just kind of one of those things where he said, "No, we'll be all right. It sucked, but we're fine." I said, "Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's only what did we really lose anyway? We had a
Yeah,
good run. We were both like, yeah, we had a good run there for a while. It was, and had we stayed in it, we probably would have been fine and moved ahead. But both of us, it needed to happen because both of us, our lives were going in different directions or whatever. It had made its course, and had that not happened, I wouldn't, be married today. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, probably. It's one of those things where he, credited credit. He gave some credits to me, and we both, because we were both kind of pretty pretty beat up by it. Got hit by a bunch of fraud and everything else, and it was came at us from a lot of different directions that we did not anticipate, and that's what life, you know, life happens when you're planning to do something else. Because we were on a pretty terror of a run there for a little while, and it was a good ride. But there's one definite instance, and I'd say, recently, with my wife and I, with both our kids now in college, this is kind of a new space for us, with both of them being in college. So we've both been kind of crediting each other and back and forth, because we're both kind of going through it. It's okay that we're both together. We're used to that, but like when you come home and there's no kids in the house, it's a different thing, especially since we've been doing it for 20 years, and we're
Of course.
figuring out, we're credit and debiting each other just to kind of balance it out, finding things
Sure.
for both of us to do together. So that's one instance where it's really working well, because if you have a good partner in life, that's what you do for each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. My wife and I have a great relationship with that as well. And there's definitely time where there's too much credit,
Hmm.
and you need to, she has her own community of friends and I have
Hmm.
mine, and sometimes you have to, go pour yourself into somebody else. And then also there's definitely times where I'm working really hard and she's working really hard and we've been in separate silos for a while, and we both feel that we're in that debit section and it's time to reconcile and go on that dinner date or go on that walk together, or just sit down and spend time and talk at any
Yeah.
capacity, whether that's in the house or whether it's outside. But that's so important for people to realize that and to kind of do a checks and balances, take inventory on where things are in that relationship. Because let's be honest, the most important relationship other than God is the one that sleeps next to you every night. And if you're blessed to have that, um, that's your life, man. You're
Hmm.
you're you're with each other to eternity and hopefully beyond. And I really do feel that a lot of people, if they would treat the relationship the same as the way they started, the
Hmm.
relationship would be just as magical.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're like, "Oh man, it's not the same." Well, what did you do in the front end of your relationship? And this goes with friends too. Like when you
Hmm.
first meet and you first start hanging out, man, you're going everywhere, you're fishing,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're just doing everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as life starts to happen, you start drifting farther and farther apart and it starts to take a little bit of toll on the relationship.
Hmm.
And that's really what I've found is when I've had really solid relationships, when I look back, I'm like, man, what happened? Well, those little
Yeah.
deposits weren't there all the time. Those deposits were, hey man, let's go do some fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go do some fishing. Well, we haven't fished in 2 years. It's
Yeah.
not the same relationship anymore.
Yeah.
Still strong, but
We're both at that point. You're both kind of two different people at that point. If it's been a couple of
yes,
years, because things have changed and everything else. And sometimes, the credits on one side are a lot more than the debits on the other side. So one person is constantly giving credit to the other person, and then there's where at a certain point you have to learn to say no. No is not a bad thing, but it has to kind of balance itself out, and you have to find what fills you up. Like maybe it's spending time with your wife, or like with me, it's reconnecting and realizing that the two of us are the focus now. That we, and we have raised our girls to be a certain way, and then that they have to make their own decisions. We'll be there for support, but we have to kind of find things that we like to do together again, and kind of make a conscious effort to talk about, just even sitting and talking is kind of sometimes overwhelming, because we didn't have as much time to do that as we did before. And so it's kind of going back to like that beginning stages or whatever, where we're starting at a different stage. And you have to learn to say no, especially to things that are really not filling you up or not filling someone else up, because I know that recently I've been, like I was telling you before we jumped on, I feel like I've been jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And yesterday I was really tired, and I said, well, I got a meetup tonight. So I had to drive down to Fort Lauderdale and went there. And immediately I wasn't tired anymore because I realized that, again, this is something that I love doing. And people have asked me, like, from the outside, they didn't really know me that well. They were like, what are you looking to get out of this? And I said, I'm not really looking to get anything out of it, but I get so much more out of it because I know that when I started going to these meetups, I wanted to connect with people and learn what other people were doing. And I just, later on, I said, well, I want to provide a space where, because eventually I found those right people that kind of helped lift me up. I wanted to provide a space where people can always come and just share ideas and network and connect and realize that other people are doing so many other things that even if you don't do what they're doing, you can take those credits that other people are doing and say, well, I can do something too. And that lifts you up. Then you can lift someone else up.
It's so true. For me, I'm the same way. Like when I go to meetups, when I go to conferences, when I'm around a group of people, it fills me up. So even
Mm-hmm.
me internally, I have like a bank account. I'm either full of the green or I'm in the black. And I definitely, I, I know exactly what you're talking about because there's definitely times that it's been all business and nothing but being in the small internal silo that we're in, and we're just all about moving the needle, and that's it. And I'm like, man, I'm really low on energy. I'm just tired and going to the gym. I'm doing all the things I normally do, but there's something missing. And I'm like, oh man, it's been a couple months since I've been to a meetup, or it's been, 4 months since I've been to a conference. And when I go to those conferences, like on the way there, I'm excited. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting excited about the people I'm going to meet, the people I'm going to reconnect with, or the total new room of all these new people I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
meet is just so amazing. And then while I'm there, man, I've definitely had people like, dude, I don't know how in the world you do it. Like we've been at this thing since 7 o'clock this morning at breakfast, and it's now 10 o'clock at night, and you're still on fire. Well, it's because I'm just on energy, like I'm
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
oxygen right now
Mm-hmm.
because it's just I love that.
I'm the same. I think that's when we're, especially the conference we were at, we, like, I could just kept going, and because the energy was good, the vibe was great, and I was meeting so many people, and then when I eventually went home, I remember I went home and I just went to sleep for, I
Yeah.
think, about
Yeah.
16 hours, something like that. And I didn't realize, because I do the same thing, like when I get off the boat and stuff, where I give a lot and talk a lot, and we work pretty hard. And then when I get home, it just, I realize the energy's not there anymore because I'm not in that, I'm not in that crowd, or I'm not feeding off all the other energy, because that just gives me so much. That gives me a lot of credits, and then the big debit comes. Well, it's not really a debit because the body needs you need to give your body credit and
Yeah,
go to
you
sleep
gotta
in your mind, you know.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's two real factors that we really need as humans. And I think number one, well, there's three actually. We could probably do another podcast on this for sure. Is number one is creating that space, creating that space where you have that energy. I'd say number two is understanding when you are low on
Hmm.
certain things. And probably number three, the biggest one, we should probably do an episode on this is the self-sabotage. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us, when we get in that space to where we're kind of drained and we might start saying some negative words,
Hmm.
as you say, how is it never say negative things because all your cells could be
So they're
listening.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Bruce
And
Lee.
yes,
Yeah.
sir. And that's so true. Like, and that we could definitely get in a whole episode on the self sabotage
Yeah. We
because
should definitely do that.
that's creating the environment. You always can't get into those environments. Like you're
Hmm.
truthfully busy and you can't go to these meetups and you can't go to these conferences because of some circumstances. but you should still try to find some kind of an area that kind
Hmm.
of gives you an energy. Try to seek that out, because if you start getting low on energy, that's where I've seen the self-sabotage does start to come in, because
Yeah.
you start pointing the finger at yourself at, man, well, because of these circumstances I've created, I can't make it to these meetups, and I can't go
Yeah.
to this conference, and on and on and on. And man, it's damaging. You
Yeah.
shouldn't do that. It couldn't. I would not engage in that activity.
Yeah, and it really is, you end up with those thoughts and stuff. Then you start bringing back all those old habits and stuff like that. Whatever it is that, and you put things in front of what you're supposed to be doing, and then you don't realize it because you got those blinders on, and you're just, well, oh, I got to get this done, and then this done, and then if you really take a step back and look, it's like, well, I don't really need to be doing any of these things because that's
Yeah,
not in
that's
alignment
it.
with my main purpose here and my why and everything else. I'm just doing it because I'm falling back into that old Scott, that like, well, I just need to do all those things and just keep grinding it out, when what you're grinding on is things that you shouldn't necessarily be doing at that time. You need to definitely, be emotionally aware of yourself and physically and mentally aware of when something is coming in. So when you start that negative talk, that's usually where there's something going on that you're not giving yourself credit, because you need to give yourself credits and debits as well. And I've heard you say this many times on the podcast, to say, hey, look back at what you've done and say, hey, Scott, you're doing good.
Yeah,
You've done
that's
really well. You did all of this, and I looked. I've done that recently, a lot more reflection time, where I'm looking at things and going, 5 years ago is completely different. 10 years ago, wow, that's a whole nother person. 20 years ago, wow, that's a completely different life and lifestyle. So it's something that you also have to give your own self credits and debits as well, because sometimes you do need to go, hey, yeah, that was a big minus, so here's what I need to do to turn that into a plus, and just kind of get that balance. Because if you don't seek that balance, we're never quite in balance, but if we're always seeking it, we're at least on the right path.
yeah, yeah. I would. This is something my mentor taught me, that when you are about to do something really difficult, or you are having difficulty completing some tasks, and it could be identified as some kind of imposter syndrome, or the lack of feeling enough is keeping you from starting or keeping you from achieving what you're trying to do, to stop and take a list, and a legal pad or in your phone, whatever you choose to use. I prefer to write personally, because I think it has a lot more power when your physical hand is moving and you're looking down and you're writing it. I think all systems are on at that point, but create a list of 30 things, 50 things that you've accomplished in your life. And if you're a father, you've accomplished becoming a father. If you're married, you're becoming your husband. There's so many small accomplishments that you could do. For one, I could say that I've made chili before. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how small, but when you start stacking the list up, I've had compliments on the food that I've cooked.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to do is to get you to get out of the debit section of the
Mm-hmm.
negative thoughts that you have, and into the credit section of all the good things that
Mm-hmm.
you have accomplished, that you've already done. And it's powerful, because when you read through it, you're like, wow, I didn't realize that I did all these things. And let's be honest, being a husband is a pretty big accomplishment. Being a mother or a father, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Those should be at the top of the
Really is.
list. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've had a job for this amount of time, or I've been able to be an entrepreneur for so long. These are
Yeah.
accomplishments, and you have to reconcile these things and put them in the top of the funnel and say, man, I have done these things.
Yeah, and I think this is in alignment to piggyback onto what you were just talking about, where your list of accomplishments, then I would say go right into making a list of 10 to 50 things that you're grateful for, gratitude list,
Yeah.
because that's going to go even deeper, because because if you are a dad, hey, I have a family, I have kids, I have I have friends, I have accomplished this, I'm a yacht captain, I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, I have siblings, I finished school and college, I traveled a lot of places, I've been to over 30, 40 countries or what have you. I mean, you start to stack that up, grateful to have traveled all these places, grateful to you know be able to have the freedom to go places and say things that I want. A lot of people don't have that, and if you don't have that, you start to reflect on, I'm doing good, and I have a lot of things to be grateful for. So why am I beating myself up? You know?
Yeah. This one really helped it for me. Listening to John Pennington one time in a conference, he said, "Compared to what?"
Yeah,
That's a
I
really
love
good
that.
one. But to really put this into words and frame this for you, I had just had a business deal go completely sideways, lost 180 grand. I was feeling pretty low at that point, and one of the people involved said, "Eddie, they can't take your birthday. No matter what happens, you still got another birthday coming. They make more money. They don't make more birthdays. They
Hmm.
can't take it from you." And I was like, man, that really, I got to thinking, I was like, yeah, I still got another shot at this. I can still
Hmm.
turn this around. I can still recover at some point to make son of a little bit of a success story out of this or something, at least a hard lesson learned. I mean, shoot, man, lessons cost money. Good lessons cost lots. The ones that
Yeah,
cost you lots, the one you remember the most. And it's what you don't know that will cost you.
and those are the ones that bring you the most experience and wisdom.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah. I
those are the
learned a lot.
ones. You don't necessarily learn so much from the wins. And I know I have a tendency a lot of times, if it's a win, I just keep going. Like, I'm right on to the next thing. But I've learned to stop even to celebrate the small wins, because that kind of builds, like, look what I did. I did that this week. Hey, today, you know, I got this done. And a lot of times, because I'm in the shipyard now on the boat, and we got a lot of things going on. There's always things we got to reset for the Caribbean and the Bahamas and stuff. And, I just, my main focus is to get one thing done, one project done every day, and I get one thing done. Okay, on the next one. Then by the end of the week, you did seven things. And then if you have the rest of the crew doing that, that's another, exponent of all that. So the pretty soon, all of you together have knocked out a pretty big list of things. Granted, it's a boat, and in life, things always keep going. They always
They do.
progress. As long as you're not regressing, you're progressing in the right direction and
Absolutely.
giving other people those credits. It keeps building.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I love that. So we definitely got to have another episode on self sabotage. I think that's a big one. We should really
Definitely.
put in some thought, think about. That's a big one. But just as a reminder to the people that are listening, if you are in that debit section, like you're just feeling low energy, in the black, use those two things that Scott and I just put out there.
Hmm.
And please put it in the chat, like some of the things that are things that you've accomplished.
Yeah.
And then the next is that list of gratification, what things you're grateful for. Those are so powerful. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, and and those things, you will be pleasantly surprised, and what a great mood you are in after that, because regardless of how low you think you are, like you said, compared to what, we have a lot to be thankful for, especially if we live in the United States of America. We have a lot of blessings that happen every day for us. A lot of people don't have it that way, so you know do that gratitude list, do that accomplishment list, and we'd like to hear what you guys have accomplished and what, this, it may be something you think is minor, but it might have had a major impact on someone else or yourself.
I'll give you a pro tip on some words of wisdom. Comparison is a thief of joy.
Deep joy. Yep. Love it.
And it really, that's one thing I wish so many people would put on their heart,
Yeah.
because I see a lot of people scroll on Facebook, scroll on Instagram, YouTube, and they compare themselves to these people that would have the jets and the
Hmm.
Bentleys and the Rolls Royce and everything else. You don't know if that thing is rented,
Yeah.
if they're illegally
Real.
standing on the airport.
If
You
it's
know,
even, if even the background is real.
dude, today with AI, I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
you could take a picture of yourself and tell it to put you inside a jet, and
Yeah.
you don't know if it's real or not. Like, you really don't. And I think the
Yeah.
new currency is real. It's reality. It's
Hmm.
just like this
Reality.
podcast. Like, you can't fake these backgrounds, man. They're real. This is really who
No.
we are.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that
I mean,
that's I wish people would put it on their heart that comparison really is a thief of joy. And don't.
yeah. Yeah. Because you don't know what that person's going through. You're going through your own thing, and don't worry about all that stuff because, like Eddie just said, it might not be real. And you're comparing yourself to what? Somebody else that, in my life, what I've found is the more flash someone has, the less cash they have. It's usually because I haven't worked for some people that are just exponentially wealthy and from generations gone by, long before us, you would not notice them in a crowd. You wouldn't pick them out of anywhere. You wouldn't see them driving the most fancy thing anywhere. Granted, they live the benefits of a very opulent life because they're flying in on jets. They're getting on yachts. They're going to, the mountains or Switzerland in the summer. They're going to St. Bart's and all those places. But you wouldn't really be able to pick them out of a crowd. They're not the ones standing in front of a Ferrari or anything like that. They're not the ones standing in front of the jet taking pictures. They are taught that way because you're not supposed to flaunt your wealth. Just like I was raised not to brag about my charity, and everything like that. Because if then it's not as charitable as if you're giving to someone, you're just giving, you're not expecting anything in return. Whereas if you're bragging about it, you want everyone to know about it. So you're trying to get something out of it, which is,
Of course.
I think, kind of counterproductive, but that's kind of an aside anyway. But
I remember
definitely,
a conversation between, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, no, go ahead.
I remember a conversation between Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, and Mark Cuban. He said, Mark, why don't you wear a suit to, these business meetings and stuff like that? And he said, I would be more worried about the guy in a t-shirt in a big business meeting than I would be the guy in the suit. Most
Yep.
likely, he's got more money. Because Mark
Yeah.
Cuban, all the time wears, a nice t-shirt, but it's a t-shirt, and,
Yeah.
very underdressed to the occasion, but he's a multi-billionaire.
Yeah.
And, Kevin is always in a full suit, dressed to the
Yeah.
hilt, very sharp. And I'm pretty sure that Mark Cuban's got way more money than Kevin O'Leary does.
Yeah. And that's a good point. So, don't judge a book by its cover, because there was it just goes to show that person, I think I read a blurb about that where he said that because I've earned enough money where I don't have to wear a suit if I don't ever want to.
That's right. That's right.
you
He's
know
not trying to impress anybody.
no.
He's done what he's done, and he's got his credits in the bank.
Yeah, he's got more than enough credits in the bank. He probably owns a couple banks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's definitely in the board of advisors.
Yeah, most definitely. And it just goes to show you that the credits will fill you up and it also fills somebody else up.
That's
And
right.
there's this so many things that you need to do, like, or you can do. If you're not feeling well and you're feeling down, another tip is, hey, just go and do something for somebody else.
That usually helps me a ton when I
Yeah,
decide, you know what? I'm really low on energy. How many people have I helped this week?
yeah,
What have I done as a good deed? And every time I'm low on energy, I can usually say, well, I haven't done anything to help
yeah,
somebody else this week. Now, I usually make sure that I have it on my calendar that I'm usually helping somebody for a couple hours at least, maybe 3 or 4 hours a week. But I put that on my calendar because I make sure that I'm always helping somebody because I'm always filled up on those days. So when somebody says on Tuesday or Wednesday, that's my mentorship calls where I'm mentoring people. When they ask me on Tuesday, man, how you doing today? I am great. It's
yeah,
because I'm about to give for the next two
yeah, yeah,
hours. And if it's on Wednesday, it's my live free Q&A. And we're like, man, how are you today? I great,
yeah.
because I'm getting ready to pour myself out for this
Hmm.
amount of time. And I love it. And no, I don't have bad days when those are my days.
Yeah, and just even smiling at somebody that's down, opening the door for somebody, and I guess that's similar to me why I get so much out of the meetups and stuff like that, where people are getting started and things like that, and they ask me about what I'm doing, and I said, well, we're starting a fund for our development deals, and we're launching that, and we're doing X, Y, and Z. We got all these projects in Texas, Kansas City, and they're like, wow. And I said, they're like, well, I could never do that. I said, yeah, you could. I was doing what you were doing just 5 years ago or six or whatever. I didn't know this even existed or was an actual thing. I knew people did these things, but I didn't know at that point that I could do it. And wasn't until I got around all those people, and that's what the whole meetup was all about, is just to help other people, just let other people see that these options and opportunities are there. And I guess that's why I get so much energy out of it, is because you know a lot of people, and myself included, I've had a tendency to think very small. And I'll say it again. Dr. Benjamin Hardy said, he said to me on my podcast, look, don't think too small because you just might make it. And it, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 out of 10, it's true, because it's it's easy to go small, or you may think it's big at that time, but with looking back, you're like, well, I was swinging too low, or I was only just trying to bunt or just to get on base, when I could have cracked it out of the park, knowing what I know now. But you know hindsight's 2020. But you it's just something that I know gives me a lot of credits, is when I'm talking to other people, and then I get even more energy because I re-met a younger guy. He's probably about 24, and him and his partner, they're both about the same age. They have about 700 units under management as a property management company. And that was the last time I was like, they're like, well, our goal is to have 1,000 in the next few months. And they hit it. And now I saw him, it's probably about 6 months later, maybe even a year. And he said, now we got a blind pool, and we're raising money. We're raising $30 million. And I said, good for you. I said, he said, yeah, I love coming here. And I'm like, and I said, well, man, anything I can do to help you, just send me what you're working on. Maybe there's some synergies or whatever, or anything, and I'm like, I love seeing like someone at that age just kind of just going for it, in his mind, it's not that big. He's like, we're going to get it. And I'm like, oh yeah, you are.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you are.
You got it
All I
already.
would tell you in that aspect is keep your eye on the ball and swing for the fence because you just might
Yeah.
connect with it and
Yeah.
put it over the fence, man. Grand slam.
Think big and go bigger.
That's right. Well, man, this has been amazing time well spent. Scott, tell people where they can find you, where you can find these episodes, all the places.
Yeah, you can find me at investwithscottkid.com, and I have both my podcasts on there. this one here, the Inner Compass. We're launching usually Sunday at 1 p.m. and then you can also check it out on Eddie's channel as well. Because we got many more episodes to come. Got a lot more to share with you guys, and we'd love to hear from you guys. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know what you need.
Absolutely. So Eddie Austin BEX here. You can go to eddieaustinbex.com. The link is going to be up there for the Inner Compass podcast. Mine come out on Monday. So I want you to start your week with a Monday with having all this good news for you to charge through your week and make it good. And another thing that Scott and I are doing is we've agreed to stagger the weeks. So you're going to see that Scott's episodes will be different than my episodes, but it's all along the same series. All we're trying to do here is make sure that we get it out to everybody here. And it's best if we don't run over each other by he's sharing shorts, I'm sharing shorts about the same time around all the good news that we've talked about here. But the episodes will stagger back and forth from channel to channel. So I encourage you, if you've seen an episode on mine and don't see the follow up episode, go check out Scott's channel and make sure that you're watching it there. We'll see you on the next episode. Be extraordinary, be great. Scott, finish it out with the key lines.
Well, I'll piggyback on to what Eddie just said. As always, I'm Scott Kidd. Be clear, be grateful, and listen.
Amen.